Shalom, 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 Israel. This is Captain Paul Israel from Kingdom Builders of Israel LLC, and today's class lesson is going to be on the book of Genesis, chapter 1, breakdown, part 3. Again, today's class topic is going to be on the book of Genesis, chapter 1, breakdown, part 3. Okay, so this is going to be the part 3 lesson of this particular series in the book of Genesis, chapter 1, understanding. Okay, so we're going to start out, of course, in general, in the book of Genesis, chapter 1, verse 14. Okay, and this is going into the fourth day of the Most High Yah, establishing the understanding of the earth situation as far as him creating a certain event to happen on earth on the fourth day. And when it says fourth day, in general, it's going into 4,000 years, okay, in the particular galaxy where the earth is located. But of course, in general, on Yahweh's time, is going to the fourth day on his time in the heavens. Okay, so we're going to start out in the book of Genesis, chapter 1, verse 14. Okay, so get out your pen and notepad, Israel. Okay, so this is the book of Genesis, chapter 1, verse 14. It says, "And Elohim said, Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years." So you see this, Israel, the Most High established to be lights in the firmament of heaven to divide the day from the night. Okay, so in general, on the first day, Yahweh already established light to be formed from the sun. Okay, but this is going into the context in Genesis chapter 1, verse 14. This is going to the context of Yahweh implementing a more stronger light in the day, and also a stronger light understanding to be implemented at night. Okay, so the stronger light to be implemented in the daytime will be the sun. Okay, so the sun is going to be pushing off a more stronger heat or stronger lighting effect, okay, going on. Okay, and also the moon is also going to implement a form of lighting. Okay, so this is why we have the moon pushing off a form of light, because in general the moon was established to have a fullness of light on this particular fourth day understanding. Okay, just like the sun was able to push off a certain amount of heat of a higher temperature, right, or a higher heat of burning situation on the particular fourth day, which we get the understanding that the fourth day is going to those 4,000 years in our galaxy. And of course, on Yahweh's time in his heaven understanding is going into the fourth day on his time frame. Okay, so this is what it's getting into. But the sun and the moon are basically tools that Yahweh used to establish a day or seasons or years on earth. Okay, so that's what the context is being used for, because you need the formation of the night and day to establish a full day understanding of the 24 hours. Okay, to push forward to the next day, in which you need those elements of the night and you need the elements of day to push off the seasons understanding, because the seasons on earth occur on certain periods of certain type of months. Okay, and then of course years occurs after 12 months has passed. Okay, because there are 12 months in a year, and you need the moon and the sun to be implemented on earth to establish the understanding of the years and seasons, and of course for days. Okay, so you need the sun and the moon for those things to be established on earth to continue as far as the habitation. Okay, that's what it's getting into in the book of Genesis chapter 1, verse 14. Okay, and also when it says, "And Elohim said, Let there be lights in the firmament," we know that's talking about the sky. So it's going to address that it's talking about the sky when it says, "Let there be lights in the firmament of heaven," of the heaven. It says, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven." So we know that's talking about the sky understanding. Okay, where we get that atmosphere understanding. It says to divide the day from the night. So Yahweh established, of course, in general, 12 hours for the night and also 12 hours for the daytime. Okay. And let them be for signs, because when you see the moon at its fulfillment, as far as being a bright, understanding, lighting effect at nighttime, you now know that it's nighttime. And also, when you see the sun at its brightness, now you know specifically that it's daytime. Okay, so this is what the context is getting into in Genesis chapter 1, verse 14. Okay, so now, again, the firmament means the sky. It says the definition for firmament, it says the heavens or the sky, a sphere or world viewed as a collection of people. So that's what the firmament is getting into, something like in the sky, understanding, but the sky is positioned as a sphere, okay, which we got the understanding of what a sphere is, where a sphere is getting into a round solid figure or its surface with every point on its surface, okay, an area of activity, interest, or expertise, a section of society or an aspect of life distinguished and unified by a particular characteristic. The sphere is a circular ball figure, okay, as you can see. So again, the firmament, right, in Genesis chapter 1, verse 14 is going to the sky, position, of course, around the earth, understanding. So now the lighting effect of the sun and the lighting effect of the moon is going to be shown on this sphere or circular earth. Okay, that's what it's getting into when we go to the book of Genesis chapter 1, verse 14. Okay, so now we go back to Genesis chapter 1, verse 2 to get the understanding that on the first day, when Yahweh established the first day understanding, which is going to those 1,000 years understanding on the galaxy time frame, okay, but the first day on Yahweh's time frame, he established a form of darkness to be done in the earth understanding. Okay, so as you can see, the first day, or the starting point, you didn't have no lighting effect coming from the moon. Okay, so this is why we do the new moon with the moon not visible, because you go back to the beginning, as far as the first starting point of the formation of the earth, there was darkness, right? There was darkness. There was no lighting effect going on at the time. So that's why we do the new moon, where you see the new moon is not visible. Okay. And this is on, of course, in general, on Yahweh's first day time frame, right? So when we go back to Genesis chapter 1, verse 14, now you're seeing a lighting effect going on with the moon now. So now you see the moon at its fulfillment, right, pushing off a full amount of light. Okay, as you can see, you only get the fullness of light from the moon only occurring on the fourth day understanding on Yahweh's time frame. And also you get the understanding of the fullness of light of the moon occurring on the 4,000 years time frame understanding, okay, of the galaxy, understanding where the earth is at. It's at 4,000 years. So as you can see, the starting point of the moon, right, the starting point of the moon had no light on the first day, or those first thousands of years when Yahweh was forming the earth. There was no lighting effect coming from the moon. Now when we get to the fourth day understanding, or those 4,000 years, now we see a lighting effect coming from the moon. So you see this, Israel? So as you can see, the new moon is when you don't have the moon visible. Okay, point blank period. Because in general, we have Hebrew Israelites that's out there that's celebrating the new moon as the full moon, when that is not so. The children of Israel did the celebration of the new moon when the new moon was not visible. Okay, point blank period. So if the Hebrew Israelites are doing the new moon is a full moon, they're going off. And primarily IUIC, right, that Hebrew camp, right, IUIC and their members, they're doing the new moon wrong. Okay, they're doing the new moon when it's a full moon, and that is wrong according to the Bible. Okay, we're supposed to observe the new moon when the moon is not visible, because it's supposed to mimic the understanding, when we go back to the beginning in Genesis chapter 1 verse 2, when it was darkness, okay, when the moon was shown to be darkness, understanding, okay, we're not supposed to be commemorating the moon, because the new moon is not when it's the full moon, okay, because the new moon is supposed to take you back to the beginning of the particular month that was established, but it's supposed to mimic the creation when Yahweh formed the earth, understanding, and the starting point of him forming the earth was when there was no moon displayed as far as having a color understanding. Okay, that's what it's getting into, Israel. So this is a cut understanding to IUIC, pushing that new moon is the full moon understanding. This is a cut unto them. Okay, we're going to let this Bible be true and every man a liar. Okay, as we can see, the full moon at its brightness did not occur until the fourth day understanding, which is going into those 4,000 years understanding in our galaxy understanding. Okay, because the fourth day understanding is going according to Yahweh's time frame. Okay, so again, we're going to let this Bible be true and every man a liar. So now that we know the starting point of the moon understanding on the first day, or those first 1,000 years, the moon did not have no light going on. Okay, so it was dark color understanding, meaning the moon did not push no light because it was darkness in the beginning. Point blank period. The Bible doesn't contradict itself. So that means the new moon is going to be what? No moon to be shown. Okay, it's going to be darkened because the moon is not going to push off no light during the new moon understanding. Okay, so now we go to Genesis chapter 1 verse 3 understanding, and it's still talking about the first day understanding, which is going to those 1,000 years understanding of the formation of the earth understanding. It says Genesis chapter 1 verse 3, and Elohim said, let there be light, and there was light. So this light that's being talked about in this understanding is basically the sun. Okay, the sun is the understanding of this context of this verse as far as light effect going on, because the sun is pushing off light similar to when you see the sunrise. When you see the sun doing a sunrise position on earth, that's the type of lighting effect that was established at this particular time. Okay, you had a sunrise lighting effect going on during those first 1,000 years understanding in our galaxy understanding. Okay, because the Most High is mimicking the beginning understanding. So that's why when you look at the sunrise of the sun, it doesn't push off strong lighting effect yet until you get to the rest of half of the daytime. Okay, till at least 3-4 hours pass. That's when you get the sun beaming off more stronger, and then it increases all the way up to a certain point, and then when you get to the end of the particular day, because a day consists of 12 hours, so when you get to the end of the daytime, the sun basically goes back down to a decreasing point, back to like what the sunlight was when it was a sunrise understanding, but now it's getting pushed off to the sunset understanding towards the end of the daytime, and then that's when you're going to have implemented the nighttime effect coming about. Okay, so this is what the understanding is getting into, Israel, that the Most High is doing everything on a time sequence understanding according to the beginning understanding. In the beginning, when Yahweh says let there be light, it's going to the understanding of the sunrise lighting effect. Okay, so that's how the lighting effect was going on at this time during the first day understanding, or those first 1,000 years understanding. Okay, on earth understanding being formed. Okay, so now we go to Genesis chapter 1 verse 4. It says, and Elohim saw the light, that it was good, and Elohim divided the light from the darkness. You see this, Israel? And Elohim saw the light, that it was good. Talking about Yahweh saw the light effect from the sun, because the sun was at a sunrise effect. Okay, And Elohim divided the light from the darkness, because at nighttime there was no lighting effect going on from the moon. Okay, it was completely darkness at nighttime, understanding. And Elohim divided the light from the darkness, because the light is coming from the sun at the sunrise, understanding, lighting effect in the daytime, understanding, which he established the 12 hours in the day and also 12 hours at night, understanding, which equals to 24 hours in a day. Okay, so that's what Genesis chapter 1 verse 4 is getting into on Yahweh's first day, understanding, which is going into, of course, in general, those first 1,000 years of the formation of the earth, understanding. Okay, so now we go back to Genesis chapter 1 verse 14. So now we understand further on what's going on in the book of Genesis chapter 1 verse 14. So it says again, and Elohim said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, because Yahweh already established the day and the night to have 12 hours each. So 12 hours at night and 12 hours at day. And then also the lights, he said, let there be lights in the firmament of heaven to divide the day from the night. So now Yahweh is implementing a lighting effect to be done at nighttime from the moon. Okay, because the moon was positioned to be what? Visible at night. Okay, so this is only occurring in the 4,000 years understanding, which is going to the fourth day understanding of the formation of the earth understanding. Okay, this is when you have the fullness of lighting effect coming from the moon. That's going on the fourth day understanding. Okay, so the new moon could not have been the full moon, as you can see. That is a lie, as you can see. And it says, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. So we already established what the sun and the moon is getting into, where it goes into let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. Okay, we already broke down and standing down. Okay, so now we go to the book of Ecclesiasticus chapter 43 verse 6. And of course this is in the book of the Apocrypha. Okay, for my new viewers, this book is in the book of the Apocrypha. Okay, and the Apocrypha was a part of the King James Version Bible 1611 version. Okay, it was in the original King James Version Bible, and the book of the Apocrypha is going to validate what was already mentioned in the book of Genesis, understanding of the breakdown, understanding between the moon and the sun understanding. Okay, so we just going to precept the understanding further in this particular book right here, called the book of Ecclesiasticus chapter 43 verse 6. Okay, it says, of course this is talking about the Most High Yah forming the moon. Okay, understanding. It says, he made the moon also to serve in her season for a declaration of times and a sign of the world. So we already had established that understanding about the moon, right, serving its particular purpose, you know, for a particular season and times and stuff like that. We already put this in understanding in Genesis chapter 1 verse 14. Okay, that the moon was created for signs and for seasons, for days and years, just like the sun as well is included in this understanding as far as being for signs, seasons, for days and years as well. But we keep it in the context of the moon understanding when we go to the book of Ecclesiasticus chapter 43 verse 6. He made the moon also to serve in her season for a declaration of times and a sign of the world. Okay, because again, the moon is used as a formation of forming the understanding for nighttime. Okay, in a particular day. Okay, so you need the moon to have the understanding of a nighttime effect. Okay. Okay, and then Ecclesiasticus chapter 43 verse 7. This is the next verse. It says, from the moon is the sign of feast, a light that decreaseth in her perfection. You see this, Israel? So it's saying from the moon is the sign of feast, a light that decreaseth in her perfection. So when, of course, in general, when IUIC and other Hebrew camps, they'll read this and say, see, it says from the moon is the sign of feast, a light that decreaseth in her perfection. So now the Hebrew Israelites from IUIC are not pushing that the new moon is the full moon understanding based upon this particular verse. But as you can see, it don't say nothing about no new moon feast is when the full moon is bright. It didn't say that in here. It just said from the moon is the sign of feast, a light that decreaseth in her perfection, right? That's all it's just saying. Because in general, when we go into those other feast day events outside the new moon understanding usually occurred in the middle of the month. Okay, and when you get into the middle of the month, this is when you see the moon at its fullness. Okay, so when you get like in the middle of the month, let's say Passover event, you had the Passover event, which is on the 14th day of the first month. Which is going to the month of Abib. So the 14th day is like the middle of the month, because let's say a month has 30 to 31 days or something like that. Let's put like a number on it, right? And the middle of the month would be like 14, 15, 16 days, something like that nature, right? So if you at the middle of the month, that means what? The moon is going to be at its brightness. That's all it's just saying. And then it's going to eventually decrease as time goes on during the month to get to the end of the month. Then it's going to take you back to the beginning where you don't have a moon visible, because it's going to the next month, which you will lead to what? Having a new moon where you don't see the moon no more, because the new moon is the starting point of the next particular month. Okay, so it says from the moon is the sign of feast, because the feast days normally occur during the middle of the month. That's what it's just saying, because when you do the feast days during the middle time of the month understanding, guess what? You have a brightness of a moon. The moon is telling you based upon what time frame period of the month you are in. Okay, that's what it's just saying. But this verse is not saying the new moon is the full moon. Okay, that's misinterpretation of the Hebrew Israelite camps, primarily IUIC. Okay, they need to repent and stop deceiving their members and telling them that the new moon is the full moon based upon this particular verse right here, because it does not say the new moon is the full moon in this particular verse. So this is a cut to IUIC, man. Okay, so again, as you can see, it just says from the moon is the sign of feast. That's not mandatory for all the feast day events understanding. Okay, just saying when those particular feast days are occurring around the middle time of the month, you're going to see the moon light at its fullness being visible. That's all it's just saying, Israel. Okay, and eventually it's going to decrease in the lighting effect of the moon understanding, because it's going to get closer to what? The next month, which then you're not going to have the moon to be visible anymore. Just like if you look on this photo right here, you have the starting point of the moon understanding being not visible, which is going to the new moon. And then as you can see, as it keeps going, you eventually see the moon at its fulfillment understanding in the middle of the month. And then it goes back down to what? No moon visible at all to start another month. Okay, so this is how you do the new moon understanding interpretation in its proper context. Okay, this is how you do it. Okay, Ecclesiasticus chapter 43 verse 8. Ecclesiasticus chapter 43 verse 8. It says the month. It says the month is called after her name. increasing wonderfully in her changing, being an instrument of the armies above, shining in the firmament of heaven. Whoa, 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 wait a minute. You see this, Israel? It says the month is called after her name. So the word month is called after the word moon. So that's why we have the word month, okay? Because it comes from the word moon. That's what it's saying. The month is called after the moon. That's what it's saying when it says her name. It's talking about the moon. The month is called after the moon. That's what it's saying. Increasing wonderfully in her changing. Whoa, wait a minute. It says increasing wonderfully in her changing. It didn't say decreasing wonderfully in her changing. It says increasing wonderfully in her changing. So as you can see, it's an increase. So once it's at a point where no light is visible from the month, then it goes into an increasing point. So now it's taking you back to the starting point of the month or starting point of the moon. Okay, so the starting point of the moon, it has no lighting effect. That's why it says increasing wonderfully. Because if it was initially at the beginning point as far as being a brightness of a full moon understanding, right? Guess what? It would have said decreasing wonderfully in her changing, right? But it didn't say decreasing. It said increasing. So that's something going up. So that's an increase. Increasing of what? Increasing of lighting effect. Okay, if you look at the picture that I have right here, you see the moon increasing to the fulfillment. Then it goes back down to a decreasing stance to start another month. Okay, that's what it's saying. Being an instrument of the armies above, shining in the firmament of heaven. Because the moon is an instrument of the armies above, meaning it's going into understanding of those stars. Okay, which we're going to get the understanding further about them stars being created on the fourth day, which go into the 4,000 years when we go back to the book of Genesis. It's going to explain the understanding about the stars. Because when you see in today's time, you see the moon and you also see the stars at night. Okay. It says shining in the firmament of heaven, because you have the stars and you have the moon shining in outer space. Point blank, period. But of course, when we go to the book of Genesis, it's going to explain when the stars was implemented to be shown in space. It occurred during the fourth day understanding, during those 4,000 years of the formation of the earth understanding. Okay. So now we got the understanding of the new moon understanding concept out the scriptures. Okay. But again, it says the month is called after her name. The month is called after the moon, increasing wonderfully in her changing, because the starting point was the moon was not visible, but then eventually it became visible during the middle of the month understanding, right? Then being an instrument of the armies above, because the moon is shown at its brightness of light during the middle of the month understanding, with the help of also with the stars being in place in outer space to push off even more light effect at nighttime. Shining in the firmament of heaven, because it's shining in the sky on earth understanding, okay, at nighttime. When you look up, you see the stars, you see the moon at its brightness understanding, okay. But again, this particular verse is a cut to IUIC new moon is the full moon doctrine. Okay, Israel, we're going to let this Bible be true and every man a liar. The Bible doesn't contradict itself. Okay, so the new moon is when you don't have the moon visible, and the new moon, full moon doctrine is a lie. Point blank, period. Okay. Okay, so now we go to Ecclesiasticus chapter 43, verse 4 understanding. They get the understanding about the sun. Because remember, the moon gave off a light and also the sun gave off a light on the fourth day or those, of course, in general, those 4,000 years of the formation of the earth, understanding. Okay. Ecclesiasticus chapter 43 verse 4. A man blowing a furnace is in works of heat, but the sun burneth the mountains 3 times more, breathing out fiery vapors, and sending forth bright beams. It dimmed the eyes. You see this, Israel? So now just giving an understanding that the sun is able to push off stronger heat. Okay, and basically compared it to basically like a fire that's burning in the furnace. Okay, because fire burning in the furnace, it pushes off extreme heat, right? So just like the sun is burning the mountains 3 times more, so the sun is pushing off a more extreme heat, breathing out fiery vapors and sending forth bright beams. It dimmeth the eyes because the sun is pushing off so much heat. When you try to look up at the sun, it makes your eyes to be dim. Okay, it's hard to see the sun with your own eyesight. Okay, that's what the book of Ecclesiasticus chapter 43 verse 4 is saying. And now we got the understanding that the Most High formed the sun to push off a more stronger light or a stronger heat, understanding, on the particular 4th day, which is going to those 4,000 years of the formation of the earth, understanding, when we go back to the book of Genesis, understanding. Okay, when we go back to Genesis chapter 1 verse 14, we get the understanding of the establishment of the sun pushing off extreme heat, understanding. Okay, and also included with that understanding is the moon now pushing off the fulfillment of the light, understanding. And notice the understanding that the Most High created 7 days of the week, understanding. So you have 7 days out the week, but this occurrence of lighting effect that's coming from the moon, right, of its fulfillment is on the 4th day. And the 4th day is somewhat like in the middle of the 7-day week. Okay, so now you get the understanding what I was saying earlier, that the starting point of the new moon is when you don't have the moon to be visible. And then when you get to the middle of the particular month, now you see the moon at its fulfillment. And then it goes back down to a decrease of understanding to a point where you don't see the moon no more. And that's how you know you are in the next month. So that's the same application that the Most High established in the book of Genesis, where you start from the 1st day understanding of the particular 1st day of the year understanding. You go into the concept of the moon not being visible. Then as time go on, as far as years, when you get to the middle, which is going to the 4th day, which is going to the 4,000 years understanding, now you see a increase of lighting effect coming from the moon, okay, in general. So as you can see, it's all going in the same time sequence as you can see in this particular picture right here. Okay, that's what it's getting into, Israel. Okay, and also when you go to Genesis chapter 1 verse 19, we go some verses down. And the evening and the morning were the 4th day. So all this occurred on the 4th day, understanding. When we get to the brightness of the sun, understanding, at extreme heat. And then also you get the moon increasing wonderfully. So you get all this understanding going on when the moon is at its brightness color on, of course, in general, on the 4th day in the book of Genesis chapter 1 verse 19, understanding. And the evening and the morning were the 4th day. Is going into at nighttime, which is the evening time at nighttime, and the morning that's going into the daytime. So 12 hours at night and then 12 hours at day. That's how you get the 4th day understanding. Okay, Israel. So that's what it's just getting into. And of course, we know when it says the 4th day, it's going into Yahweh's time frame. And of course, on the galaxy where we at, it's going into 4,000 years. Okay. Okay, so we go to the book of Ecclesiasticus chapter 43 verse 5. It says, great is Yahweh that made it, and at his commandment runneth hastily, because Yahweh commanded the moon to give off its light. In the book of Ecclesiasticus chapter 43 verse 8. And also Yahweh gave a commandment for the sun to push off its light in the book of Ecclesiasticus chapter 43 verse 4, understanding. Okay, And we got the understanding that the commandment was given for these things to push off the lighting effect at its max on the fourth day understanding in the book of Genesis chapter 1 verse 19, which is really going into those 4,000 years of the formation and creation of the earth understanding. Okay, so now we go back to Genesis chapter 1 verse 14 again. So now we have understanding what's going on in the book of Genesis chapter 1 verse 14 understanding. It says, and Elohim said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. So now we got the understanding what this is getting into about the sun and the moon pushing off the lighting effect at its fulfillment understanding. Okay, because we at the middle of the week understanding on Yahweh's time frame. And also is at the 4,000 year mark. Okay, because years later have passed, so that's why you're able to see the brightness effect from the sun and the moon understanding. Okay, so now we got the understanding of that. So now we go to the next verse, Genesis chapter 1 verse 15. We're gonna get the understanding. Genesis chapter 1 verse 15. It says, and let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. And it was so. Yahweh just established what we already mentioned, that the sun and the moon was supposed to give light upon the earth. Okay, on different time frames, 12 hours at night and then 12 hours at the day. Okay, so Yahweh just establishing the moon and the sun to give off lights understanding. Okay, and notice this is not at the beginning understanding of time, understanding of earth. Okay, so this is thousands of years later. Okay, or days later, to push off extreme lighting effect, okay, from the moon and the sun. Okay, as you can see, the Bible speaks plain English of this understanding. And it says, Genesis chapter 1 verse 16, and Elohim made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. Whoa, wait a minute. You see this, Israel? So now it's just specifying what we already read in, of course, Genesis chapter 1 verse 14. We already read the understanding about the lights. We also read about the lights in Genesis chapter 1 verse 15. But now it's given a more extreme account that is letting you know that these lights that took effect was at the fulfillment of the sun understanding, pushing off a more stronger heat in the daytime. And it also established that the full moon understanding was at its brightness understanding at this time frame on the fourth day understanding. Okay, that's what it's establishing. So Yahweh establishing a more brighter light, stronger light coming from the moon and the sun understanding. Okay, and also he made the stars also. So this is also the time frame when Yahweh made the stars as well in outer space understanding, so it could be shown on earth understanding. So the stars was formed on the fourth day understanding as well, included with the brightness of the sun, included with the brightness of the moon understanding. Okay, that's why Yahweh says he has to establish the stars to be included with the night. So now at nighttime you see more lighting going on at nighttime, okay, versus you just having the moon just pushing off light by itself. Yahweh established the stars to push off lighting effect as well, included with the moon understanding. Okay, so that's why it says the greater light to rule the day, talking about that sun pushing off extreme heat. Okay, because the sun goes through different stages. It goes through the sunrise effect. Then it goes to the fulfillment of the sun pushing off heat. And then when you get towards the end of the day, it decreases to a lesser light to go into a sunset lighting effect. Okay, and then that's when you're going to have the moon to be pushing off the lighting effect understanding. Okay, as far as fulfillment, based upon it being in the middle of the particular month understanding. But in this context, this going to the middle of the understanding of the days of the week understanding, because this is occurring all on the fourth day understanding. But it's really going into those 4,000 years in our galaxy understanding. Okay, so now we got understanding that the moon and the sun were created to push off stronger lights when we get to the middle of the understanding of the days of the week understanding. Okay, in this context. Okay. So as you can see, the new moon is the full moon is a lie. Because again, the Bible doesn't contradict itself. So again, the new moon is the full moon is a lie. Because the starting point of the moon was darkness. Because we don't get to the light until you get to the fourth day, or those 4,000 years of the moon being shown invisible on the earth. Okay, so this is another cut to IUIC again. Okay, this is another cut to you Hebrew Israelites out there pushing the new moon is the full moon doctrine. That's a lie. Okay, we're going to let this Bible be true and every man a liar, man. Okay, the new moon is when you don't have the moon to be visible. Point blank, period. Okay, so now we go to the next verse. Genesis chapter 1 verse 17. And Elohim set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. So again, Yahweh is just establishing the understanding of the moon and the sun and the stars were set in place to give a certain lighting effect upon the earth. That's all it just stated, Israel. We already established that. We already established that the firmament is going into the sky or the heaven. Understanding as far as on earth concept of the sky. Being positioned as a spear. Okay, being positioned as a ball. Understanding. So now the sun, the moon, and the stars is going to be shining on the spear-like shaped earth. Understanding. That's what it's just saying. Okay. That's what it's saying in the book of Genesis chapter 1 verse 17. Understanding. Okay. So now we go to Genesis chapter 1 verse 18. Okay. It's kind of basically going to repeat itself again. So it's repeating itself over and over again. So just in case there's no confusion going on here. Okay. Genesis chapter 1 verse 18. And to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And Elohim saw that it was good. So again, it's just repeating itself again that Yahweh established the nighttime to be separate from the daytime. Okay. So now you have the moon to push off a lighting effect at night, along with the stars to push off a lighting effect at night. Then you also have the sun to push off a lighting effect in the daytime. Okay. So 12 hours at night and 12 hours at daytime to push off some type of form of lighting effect. Okay. Okay, this is all it's just saying on the particular fourth day understanding, or those 4,000 years of the formation of the earth understanding. Okay. So now we go to the next one. It says Genesis chapter 1 verse 19. And the evening and the morning were the fourth day. Okay, Israel. So now you got the concept of what's going on Yahweh's time, which would be the fourth day understanding. But in the galaxy time frame where the earth is at, it's going into 4,000 years. Okay, it's going into 4,000 years understanding. But in general, every day of the galaxy, it took 1,000 years. So the first day on Yahweh's time would be 1,000 years. The second day would be 2,000 years. The third day would be 3,000 years. The fourth day would be 4,000 years has passed. Okay, so that's all it's just saying. But it took 1,000 years understanding to what form the concept of increased lighting effect of the moon and the sun, and also the formation of the stars to be created. Understanding. Okay, it took 1,000 years for that to get done. Okay, that's all it's just saying, Israel. So Genesis chapter 1 verse 19, and the evening and the morning were the fourth day. So that's an establishment that the fullness of the lighting effect from the sun, the moon, the stars took place in the middle of the week. Understanding. Okay, that's what it's just saying.